Hey there, welcome to saas.unbound podcast. I'm your host, I'm Nadeina, head of growth at SaaS Group. A serial acquirer buying wonderful SaaS businesses to take them to the next level. And here I chat with inspiring founders and experts to get an inside scoop on how they made their business a success. So today with me is Bernard, co-founder of Clearscope, an AI-driven SEO content optimization tool. Welcome.
Thank you
And
for having me.
we had you on the podcast before when I was just starting with SaaS Group, and there wasn't that bit about AI driven blah blah
No,
thing. Now everyone has it, and obviously, I told you before we started recording, we do own a couple of SEO companies at SaaS Group, and I mean, everyone is adding AI into it because that's where we think the future is. So, before we jump into the recent changes and everything, maybe for those who don't know you yet and don't know what Clearscope is, maybe a bit of a background and what made you do Clearscope.
sure. So, my first foray into SEO was being hired as a growth hacker when growth hacking was cool in 2013 by a YC company called 42 Floors. Long story short, I hacked a lot of growth, but mainly SEO was the channel that worked really well for us. So I explored the entire landscape, black hat, white hat, gray hat, bought links, got manual web penalties, did the whole thing, and really got my hands and feet wet with SEO. From there, I left and I was working on a bunch of different side projects, but the one thing that Silicon Valley kept asking me for was SEO. And so as my bank account was running dry, my business partner and I was like, all right, screw it. Let's just do SEO consulting because people apparently want to pay us for SEO. So we stumbled into SEO consulting where we work with clients like DoorDash, Strava, Teespring, Compass, helping them navigate how to scale their SEO strategies. From there, we were testing a variety of different possibilities to improve search rankings. And one of the tests was to use natural language processing to inform whether or not a body of content was relevant. So if we're talking about, say things to do in San Francisco, you would expect that a piece of content talking about that should include concepts like Golden Gate Bridge and Golden Gate Park and Presidio and so on and so forth. So we basically gave people insights into that. It worked really well. And we turned that into a bootstrapped software as a service called Clearscope close to 10 years ago at this point. I would say, things went really well up until COVID, where things went super well. All of software basically exploded during COVID. And then ChatGPT in 2022, 2023 basically just changed the entire landscape of how search works and where we're headed. So that's forced us to reposition and pivot our company to now focus on helping people navigate AEO, answer engine optimization, or GEO, generative engine optimization. I think the industry is still trying to figure out what to call it because it's so new and it's so fast changing.
Yeah, I remember when I was preparing for our first episode, that was 2.5 years ago. I was, I mean, I'm not an expert in SEO, not even close. But back then I was just terrified. And I remember for our podcast, I prepared this sheet of like maybe 40 questions because I was like, oh my God, I don't know. I don't know what we're going to talk about. And what you just said takes me a little bit back to this. But that said, and I don't know if that's something I can share publicly, but let's try. And because you started talking about how SEO landscape is changing, and adding this AEO, GEO, whatever EOs there are, and we at SaaS Group, we even had this thought of, okay, like it's going to collapse completely. Like all the SEO companies that are out there are going to die, and maybe we should not look into any of the SEO tools for future acquisitions. That was like literally one of the thoughts that we had, and we discussed it. And I mean, that's not the case. Phew, good. but
Good.
but yeah, I'm totally there with you. There is so much confusion, and like a lot of companies are rebranding or adding tons of features, and you did too. I mean, now I think you are rebranding, or maybe already finished with it, into discoverability platform.
That's right.
What does it mean?
What does it mean? Yeah. So to just build, to give the backdrop of what's going on in SEO, you have ChatGPT come out November of 2022, and you have Google say, "Oh, okay, that's interesting. That could be a threat." By 2023, you have Google saying, "Okay, we're going to launch search generative experience." If you've been in SEO for a long time, this is the precursor to AI overviews and called it SGE to start. Also, at the same time, they launched Bard, which is the precursor to Gemini. Since then, obviously, the landscape has evolved very quickly. So ChatGPT posed a unique threat to Google in the way that people discover information and in the way that people write content, right? Back in the past, 5 years ago, if you wanted a piece of content, you would have to hire a writer, whether that's an in-house writer or an outsourced writer or an agency that you're using. And that writer would have to be somewhat of a subject matter expert within the topic that they're writing about. And, you would draft an outline, go back and forth, lots of like human editorial. But now you could just go to ChatGPT and say, write me an article on whatever. And it'll write a pretty convincing, well-written article on whatever you ask it for. So Google obviously has a huge problem on their hands. That's why you're seeing so much change happen in search so fast. So number one, right, Google recognizes that.
Can I interrupt you there for a
Yes,
second?
go
Because,
ahead.
I mean, we all talk about using ChatGPT or whatever it is for writing content, and let's face it, it is pretty good, especially if you invest some time into teaching it what you need and the tone of voice and like yada yada. It will come up with a fairly good copy, and a lot of people are saying that, okay, you can generate a billion articles and start ranking fairly fast with a new tool. And that's probably also true. But on the other hand, everyone's saying, okay, but we don't know if at the end of the day it will be penalized. And, all those AI generated articles will be deranked or not, seen by AI or whatever. How what to believe, first of all. What do you believe? And yeah, where is that balance?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good question. So I can answer this concretely from a traditional SEO background, and then I can, I have some theories on how this is going to unfold in a generative or answer engine optimization. So historically speaking, spam on the internet has always existed and has now been exacerbated by AI. Right now, you can click a few buttons and get 1,000 articles created and published within a matter of minutes, hours, again, depending on how technically savvy you are. The way that Google fought this in the past was by running around saying your content needs to have EEAT, experience, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness, which was really more of the tail wagging the dog than the dog wagging the tail. And what I mean by that is that EEAT are simply attributes of content that have high user engagement signal. So at the end of the day, how Google has weeded out bad content is that they just test it, right? They say, okay, we have, content result number one and content result number two. They send a bunch of users to that setup and they monitor what happens, right? Did user one stay on content result number one? If they did, how long? Did they go back to the search results? Did they click on something else? If they did, how long did they stay there and what happened next, right? So Google is just running an infinite A/B test across their search engine results. And what they found was that high quality content was engaging and exhibited attributes of experience, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. So the Google PR team said, okay, we're going to just brand this thing, we're going to run it with it, and we're going to just say, this is what matters. But really what mattered was that somebody landed on your page, they found what they were looking for, and they never went back to Google to click on another result or perform an additional search. You can imagine in this world, if you spun up 1,000, 10,000 articles and they were all kind of okay, but weren't that great, from a user engagement signal perspective, you just would not rank. And Google would weed that out fairly quickly. That said, in an AI world, it's different, right? Because these different models are trained on corpuses of content and data. And who's to say that if I spun up, well, we'll take this to even a more extreme case. Let's say I spin up 1,000 domains, and within those 1,000 domains, I create 1,000 articles on the 1,000 domains, right? All of a sudden, we're talking about a digital footprint of 1 million that I'm injecting, right, into the internet, which then some percentage of it will end up as training data that gets used to inform how these large language models work. That presents itself a very unique and interesting challenge for OpenAI and Gemini and Claude and Perplexity and all of these different large language models. What they've been doing, at least currently, is these different language models they said, well, who's the best arbiter of information retrieval? Google. So what they've been doing is they've just been going and scraping Google for the search results against this, data set of topics or prompts that they're building their training data around. Google obviously got unhappy and said, no, we're going to stop that, which is why you saw, if you follow what's going on in SEO, Google cracked down on scrapers by removing the possibility for scrapers to scrape the top 100 results for any given query. They've made it basically impossible to do, and you can only scrape the top 10, maybe the top 20 at this point. So all the large language model providers were basically saying, okay, this is a big problem. And if 1,000 domains got injected, each with 1,000 different articles, we don't know whether or not that content is valuable and meaningful. But what we do know is that Google search is pretty good. It's user engagement signal informed. So we're just going to trust whatever they have in their index, and we're going to use that as the running model. Google has since cracked down on it. And so anyways, we don't know how that then is going to unfold from a web spam perspective on, all these different players' sides.
So, summing it up.
Yes.
Yes or no on AI generated content?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Oh wow, that's a new one. That's the first. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to be very honest here. That's the first time anybody said, "Yes, okay, go do it."
Go do it. I mean, look, we're here, and the new landscape of what we're playing in is not 10 blue links. The new landscape of what we're playing in is influencing the answer. That's it. The new world, whether you like it or not, is going to be a user going to AI mode and having a conversation with an AI agent. Whether, again, that's Google, or ChatGPT or Apple Intelligence or Grok or Perplexity or Claude, anyways, whatever it is, that's going to be the future of information retrieval. In that world, you're not clicking on anything, generally speaking. And so you got to use every advantage that you can have to influence the model's answer and to be part of that answer. And if you're not using AI generated content to at least scale some of your content creation strategies, then you're going to be left behind.
Yeah. I mean, everyone is also talking about Reddit. Like the moment we learn that Reddit is going to be prioritized in those AI overviews in Google, everyone just ran off to Reddit to post about their company's tools, services, whatever they were doing. And there are a lot of experiments going on. I've heard about this, well, allegedly not so nice technique that people are using is when you go to Reddit and you post something and then you basically promote your tool or whatever it is you're doing. And then you close the comments so nobody else can go and say, oh, but Clearscope is better. Use Clearscope. So it's just so funny how I think you're right. We're just trying to influence this answer. So there is no question of trustworthiness that Google was apparently allegedly after.
Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah, I mean, to build on top of that, it's pretty sophisticated, but essentially what you can do is you can create a bunch of different Reddit accounts. You farm the karma by basically going back and looking at previously top ranked, like upvoted posts, and then you either cross post them or repost them in the same thread, right? If something was posted 5 years ago, got 10,000 upvotes, and then you just posted the same thing, it's going to do really well. And people have short memory spans. And so you then all of a sudden get a bunch of different accounts with high karma, and then you play off of one another, right? You basically have one of those accounts say, what are the best AEO or GEO tools? And then you have another account chime in and be like, well, I use Clearscope. And then you have another account come in and say, yes, +1 for Clearscope. And maybe here's something like of these other options. And essentially, if you go way back in SEO days, I think this is the equivalent of, comment spam on forums, to
Yeah.
build links. You could even just call this like white text on white background. But yes, it is essentially a tactic. Yes, it works. Yes, there's a lot of AI comment spam things that are floating around that are basically just trying to insert brand mentions across any keyword that, a comment or like a post has. And yeah, unfortunately, it currently works. But at the same time, I mean, that's been the story of SEO from day zero, right? It's always been a cat and mouse game, right? Like somebody finds a loophole, they exploit it, and then Google fixes it, and then it just keeps happening over and over again. And so, the initial question that you asked me is like, yeah, like we should, as growth marketers and software owners and just people who are looking to get ahead, exploit all the loopholes that we could find until they get plugged, and then look for the next loopholes. So that's all that I'm suggesting.
So we're a little bit back into this growth hacking, grow overnight backlinks dark era. Uh, for where,
Unfortunately,
yeah,
yeah. Except now there's like more players, right? Like essentially back then you would say, okay, we're just playing the Google game. But now you're playing an OpenAI game. You are also playing a Google game. You're
mm-hmm.
also playing a Gemini game that's similar to the Google game, but not quite. And so there's all kinds of different, like models to pay attention to because AI is the gold rush, and different models have different tendencies, if you will. And so if you exploit OpenAI, then, will that end up exploiting Google? It's tough to say.
Okay. All right, but you one of the things that I noticed you talking about is not just obviously generating new content, but taking care of your content health. So making sure that your content is fresh and you have all the like internal links sorted. So why is that important? And again, is there a good, hopefully ethical way to do that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's very important because the way that AI technology works, again, at a very high level, is three different layers. Number one, foundational layer, you have training data. Training data is essentially a corpus of documents that a large language model ingests to then, build responses off of. Technically speaking, this corpus of data will come with a knowledge cutoff, right? So the latest Google models are trained on content up till January of 2025. So that's layer number one. Layer number two is what we call the validation layer. What happens during the validation layer is that when you're having a conversation with GPT or Gemini, what happens sometimes is that you ask it something and it says, wait, hold on, I'm going to perform a web search. This tends to happen when you're asking about recent things that may have happened, right? I might be like, what's the price of Bitcoin, or, this or that, in which case the model does not know because it's only been trained up till a specific date. And so it must research it and confirm whether or not, what the new data says. So the validation layer is the fact that AI performs web searches to validate claims that they're making and prevent inaccuracies and hallucinations before generating the response to the end user. The last layer is what we call the memory and context layer. So the memory and context layer just refers to the fact that based off of previous conversations that you've had with ChatGPT or Gemini, the model is likely to skew its response when it responds to you towards the things that it thinks you're going to care about, aka personalization. So what you asked, right, in terms of the okay, does monitoring content matter? The answer is yes, because what ends up happening is that when the AI performs the web searches, what they're looking for is relevant, updated, and fresh content, right? Because they're only trained up till a specific point. So they want to prevent the inaccuracies. And if your content is 5 years old, it's not going to qualify to be a source that, AI, it's not going to qualify, but it's going to have a much more difficult time qualifying because the AI models prefer content that's more recent, up to date, and fresh.
Okay. So is there a way to update your content? Okay, so let's say you're a Clearscope, right? You've been around for 10 years and you've been writing about what you're doing all those years. How are you updating your content? What do you prioritize? And in the update process, do you change the format? Like how do you make sure, is there a hack to like reformat old content so it again is being prioritized in the search engines?
Yeah. This is the new workflow that we're recommending that people take, and we're finding good success with it. So again, back to that conceptual model, layer one, training data, layer two, validation layer, layer three, memory and context, right? That's the stack. So when a user interacts then with an LLM, they'll ask a prompt. What you can then get back is the actual web searches that these models are performing. So a good example is, if I ask what are the best SEO tools, Gemini literally goes out and it searches best SEO tools, free SEO tools, essential SEO tools, and it searches a variety of different concepts, right? These are the web searches that Gemini has deemed to be important to validate any inaccuracies that it might have before it generates the response to the end user. This acts as the starting point of what we need to be thinking about, right? So now when we're looking at our existing content, we got to ask ourselves, do we have a piece of content targeting all of the different web searches that these models are performing when they are validating the response to the end user? We might have a piece of content on best SEO tools, but maybe we don't have one on free SEO tools or essential SEO tools, in which case we should create new content assets, again, with the aid of AI generated content to help scale this content creation, because what we're dealing with is the long tail of queries. When AI performs web searches, some of them make sense, like best SEO tools, and some of them make absolutely no sense, but they do it anyways because AI just kind of does things the way that they do. I like to attribute it to in the early days of AI image generation. This is like having an extra finger on the human being. Like when AI does web searches, sometimes there's an extra appendage or an extra finger, and it doesn't quite make that much sense. But the AI is going to do it anyways. So this then acts as the starting point for a new type of content creation strategy that is no longer focused on keywords that users are typing in, but instead web searches that AI is performing to validate the responses they're giving back to the end user. So we look at that, right? We say, okay, here are all the AI web searches. Here is our inventory of content. Which ones match up? That makes sense. Where are we missing, gaps within the topics that, we care about? And we should create new content to match those particular things. When we're then now talking about refreshing the existing content, what we're doing is, well, just using Clearscope to do the entity analysis. And the reasoning as to why that works is because large language models are looking for relevant passages and chunking that to then give back to the end user when they're giving back the response, right? When you talk about best SEO tools, it wants to see Ahrefs and SEMrush and Moz because those are the best all-in-one SEO tools. And so by then creating a piece of content and making sure those entities are there, you're basically reinforcing to the model that yes, your piece of content is relevant and it does cover the different entities that it's expecting. What we've then further done at Clearscope is that we've then taken the query, the AI web search, and we've actually prompted the models as well. We say, okay, well, for essential SEO tools, we just ask GPT and Gemini, give us what you think are the essential SEO tools. And then we do the same entity extraction against the responses that the AI is giving back. And then we flag those in your text editor experience at Clearscope. So now you not only see the different relevant entities from a search perspective, you also see how they line up with the responses that the AI is actually giving back to the end user. You want to basically, in a nutshell, stuff as many of those into your piece of content. And then what the models, when they see that, they basically their eyes light up and they're like, wow, that is a really rich, piece of content or passage that I'm seeing because it talks about all of these different entities that, I care about. That then allows you to win an AI citation, and that kind of goes into the next part of the workflow. But when you're updating content, what you want to be starting with is updating the content that the AI is already citing on your domain or your page, because those AI cited pages are essentially being used to influence the answer already.
I think that's such an awesome piece and insight because honestly, before, I don't know, a year ago, when I started using ChatGPT or any other chats like that, I didn't know how to do this, right? So every time I thought I need to prompt it and I need to know exactly what I wanted to do. And obviously sometimes the answers were very frustrating. I was like, that doesn't work. And then when I learned that you can ask it. The trick is to ask it, okay, what is already in you? What are you already giving other people? What is the answer that you have kind of pre-built into you?
The training data, yeah.
Yeah, and then, when it became really a conversation, it became so much more clear, what to do and how to use it. But also, to your point about chunks, we recently built this tool we called Contexter, which basically allows you to talk to every podcast episode that I ever recorded. So we fed it all the transcripts, and at first we were like, okay, that works in a really, really weird way. It often doesn't know what we're talking about, cannot give us an answer. And it took some time to figure out that apparently the chunks that we asked it to work with were too small. So it couldn't, like, in a three, I think it was like 3 to 7 seconds of content. I mean, what do you say in 3 to 7 seconds, right? It just couldn't see like the path. And when we said, okay, work with, I think now it's about a minute, it started working. And that was such an essential learning for us to understand that we need to figure out what kind of chunk of information, like what is the best kind of format of the answer that we're looking for. So yeah, is there, okay, that the kind of the ideal chunk of text in your content that you have to produce so that LLM sees it better than anything else?
So it's a complicated answer because the, important chunks are oftentimes not so apparent, right? And what I mean by that is that when people are having dialogues with these different AI agents, the queries and the shape of the conversation is a completely black box, right? Like in the past, in traditional SEO, right, we would say, yeah, we target best SEO tools, and that's all that matters. But in this new world, if you actually look at the underlying like API calls and what's happening when you're having the conversation, you might start with best SEO tools. It might say Ahrefs, SEMrush, Moz Pro, whatever, right? But then I might say, oh, but I'm an agency owner, so I need SEO tools that scale across, a bunch of usage. And all of a sudden, right, like the initial chunk from a, content creation process made a lot of sense. Yes, talk about Moz, Ahrefs, all of the different features. But all of a sudden, I'm saying usage and, rates and billing and flexibility, right? And these language models are going to be looking then for agency keywords, right? Like if usage or flexibility or whatever, like a term comes up, then that actually becomes important. So in this world, it's very hard to actually say, yes, like if we're talking about at best SEO tools, do exactly this, because we're getting into, again, I've been calling this the long tail, but we're getting into long tail optimization, right? We don't know what's going to happen within a conversation and how that shape is going to happen. So in essence, you kind of have to cover your brand in a very diverse set of ways. And what we're finding is that, okay, A, cover the normal entities that exist for any given topic. But then B, like sprinkle in basically like massage your like brand sentiment for the specific attributes that you think are distinct and important to your business. And that's insights that comes from customer success or sales or marketing, right? It's like people know Clearscope because of its polished and like intuitive like user interface. And so if we're having a piece of content on the best SEO tools, yes, we're going to talk about Ahrefs, SEMrush, Moz, but then we'll throw Clearscope in. And when we're describing Clearscope, we're going to say, yes, it's easy to use. It's polished. It might be a little bit pricier compared to other options, but people like, the quality of the recommendations, the customer success team, right? And then when users are now interacting with these different agents and they say, okay, best SEO tools, and it says whatever, if they come back and they say, well, I need a lot of training, then the fact that we put customer success in that chunk actually matters a lot, because the agent's going to pull that out and say, well, then you should go with Clearscope because they focus a lot on customer success. Anyways, it's a long-winded way to say, know your brand's strengths, know your brand's weaknesses, and you can even ask these different agents, like, what are my brand strengths and weaknesses? And they'll tell you, and then use that to then basically massage how these agents are thinking about your brand. And that's probably the most like cohesive answer that I can give.
Yeah, that's super cool. Thank you. And I'm gonna back you up here because that's also what I did. I basically created this custom GPT and then ran it to, to find the strengths and weaknesses and, what we focus on and what other acquirers focus on and what we're missing. Is there, a link that we're missing two founders' hearts that that would set us apart. And it was really very interesting, and it gave me a lot of perspective on like what content we can still produce and like what how to maybe change our messaging a little bit. So yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm still skeptical and sometimes actively irritated by by LLMs and AI, but it also on the other hand, it's such a cool way to you know look at something you've been working on for a while from a different perspective to kind of escape that tunnel vision that you develop either way. But we started talking about you rebranding into discoverability platform, and then we kind of went away from this. So what else you guys are doing that you think is now essential for all of the rest of us win in SEO or AEO, GEO, whatever.
First, I just want to congratulate you because I just prompted ChatGPT about who are the best acquirers of SaaS companies, and SaaS Group comes up as number 2. So
Yes.
looks like y'all are doing something right. And then secondly, I think that, there's a whole debate, if you will, going around that like GEO or AEO is just a SEO. And while there is a lot of correlations and truth to that, right, just based off everything we talked about, where language models are scraping Google and so on and so forth, I think the key difference is within the target queries that you need to be creating content against. And so at Clearscope, for any given topic or prompt, we show you all of the web searches that Gemini and GPT are performing for that particular prompt. And I think that that is the new way to think about keyword research, right? In the past, keyword research was just monthly search volume and keyword difficulty. And that made sense because we were targeting actual users who were typing things into Google and expecting to click on a link. In this new world, users are not expected to click on anything, right? They just want to be spoon fed the answer, in which case the way that you think about your keyword research needs to not be tailored around somebody performing a search, but more tailored around what is AI doing when it's researching the topic for you. What are the keywords? What are the queries that they're interested in? And designing your content to match that is the biggest difference that we're seeing between AEO, GEO, and SEO. Because when you look at the web searches, man, some of them are pretty darn whack. You're like, what is that even? And it's because AI is AI, and it does its own thing. So I think that's the biggest difference. And then, yeah, so targeting the AI web searches, Clearscope helps with that. Number two is going to be AI cited pages. I think people think about AI cited pages in the wrong way. And what I mean by that is that they say, well, yeah, it's good that I'm winning an AI cited page because then I can get traffic from ChatGPT or Gemini. And it's like, no, that's not actually how you should be thinking about it, in my opinion. When you win an AI citation, what the AI is telling you is that your content was worthy enough to have been used to inform the response that they're giving to the end user. AI is the whole purpose of AI is not to send you to a website. It's to just give you the answer. So getting traffic from AI is just a nice side effect of AI citing your content. But really, what you should think about when it comes to AI cited pages, and Clearscope gives you all of the pages that AI is citing against the prompts that you're tracking against, is to use those to influence the answer. And so if you see, like AI is citing your about page 5 times across a variety of different prompts on, how to buy a SaaS company, who are the best, purchasers of SaaS companies, then you better go to that page and, make sure everything on that page is up to date. It represents your brand correctly. You could even use it in a antagonistic way and put down your competitors and say, yeah, like that buy, Flippa, like don't go with Flippa. They suck, right? And that's important because those pages, are being used to influence the response that AI is giving back. So, anyways, long story short, two big things is target AI web searches, not keywords, and win AI citations, but use them to influence the answer that the AI is giving back, not to receive traffic, because that's not the point.
That's super interesting. Just on the side note, not a competitor, Flippa. So
Yeah.
they're good guys. They're our
I'm just throwing
sponsors.
stuff, exactly. Just throwing
Yeah.
some stuff out.
Whew, oh God. You just cost me another event, Bernard. So, but no, that's really really cool. I think it's really like you said, like you put it at the beginning. It's a very interesting challenge, and for me, it's always been also a challenge to understand like where where is that balance, but also where is the bullshit. So because what is the word I'm looking for, repurposing or rewriting or writing new content for ChatGPT or any other AEO whatever thing is basically, like you said, making sure that we have the long tail words there, or quick queries, or call it whatever you call it. So I was like, okay, so if I'm using the, say, how to sell your B2B SaaS company to a serial acquirer, what am I doing? Am I doing SEO? Am I doing AEO? Does it matter? Would it matter to Google, to ChatGPT? So yeah, as a person who's like not that savvy in SEO, let's say, it was always just a thing of understanding where do we land with this new piece of content. Where do we land? Does it help us with ChatGPT? Does it help us with Google? Because after, I think you're right, we want ChatGPT to give us an answer, and then what happens, we to validate that answer, I think a lot of people still take it and go to Google and say, okay, what the hell is saas group? So how to make sure that ChatGPT gives you an answer that, yes, okay, saas group is the second best serial acquirer out there, but also make sure that when you go to Google and say, what is saas group, is actually saas group that pops up there, and not something. There is a tent company in Russia, I think, that's called saas group. so so it's a bit of a black box, but also a cool thing to figure out with different types of context. So if you had one tip, one hack, one something, piece of advice to give to founders, bootstrappers, maybe SEO experts out there, if they're just beginning with their new tools, say they want to rank, they're building something in AI space, what to do, how to rank, how to get ChatGPT to love you.
Yeah. So number one is figure out a topic that you want to own. So, say with Clearscope, that would be SEO or SEO content or content marketing, right? And then number two, it's to then understand all of the subtopics within that particular topic. So if we're talking about, say SEO, then there's on page, there's off page, there's, technical, there's how to do it, there's why you should do it, right? There's all of these different things. And then step three is to then design synthetic prompts against each one of the subtopics, right? So for on-page SEO, it'd be like, how do I do on-page SEO? Why is on-page SEO important? What is on-page SEO, right? To then understand all of that, different landscape. Step three is to then understand all of the AI web searches that are being performed against, right, all of those synthetic prompts that you've identified for the topic that you care about. This then acts as your blueprint of the universe of keywords that you should go after. Some of them will look very normal, like, oh, the model searched what is on-page SEO. Some of them will look really weird. It'll be like on-page SEO factors 2025 Google official, something like that. So anyways, look at them and then look at the ones that look a little bit weird. And then I would say start there. Create content against the ones that just look a little bit weird. It'll be like advantages of on-page SEO for manufacturers. Like that was weird. I don't know why ChatGPT decided to search that, but let's take a step back. Let's create a piece of content on advantages of on-page SEO for different industries. And by doing that, what you're doing is that you are shortcutting the training data, like the stack, right? You're inserting yourself at the validation layer, which is actually the easiest way to then influence the models, right? Because influencing the actual training data itself is really difficult. Who knows, how that works. But when AI performs a web search, it's either crawling Google or Bing or a combination of both. And that's the fastest way to then get your brand to be mentioned when, somebody's searching for on-page SEO, because, we've covered that particular angle. And that's how I'd approach that.
Awesome. So go niche.
Go niche, go long tail.
All right. Well, coming back to Clearscope and what's been going on with you guys, that I have a couple questions that I always ask at the end. So, it's been turbulent. It's been, not easy in the last couple of years. But what has been the biggest win and maybe the biggest failure as well in learning?
Biggest win, the biggest value in learning. Whew, yeah. I think I think the biggest learning is that, nothing is forever, right? They say software, not software, but products have life cycles, and I totally get how that all just like played out. And I think game changing technology comes, once a decade, once every other decade, something like that. And I think the big, one before this was mobile. But anyways, it was a humbling experience to realize that, like, when you build something and it starts to work, it's not forever, right? You have to keep iterating and you have to keep pushing, or else either competitors will come and take your pie, or a new technology will just emerge and make a bunch of, old, more traditional stuff obsolete. So I'd say that's the biggest learning.
What's the biggest win? Let's finish on the positive.
The biggest win, I think the biggest win is honestly been just trying to understand the space more deeply and building a actionable framework of targeting AI web searches, using entities, and actually having that work for our customers. And so, right, with great change comes great opportunity. And I think that we've finally stumbled upon a workflow and a process that people are seeing success with. And I would like to believe that this particular way of doing things is going to be a durable way to approach AI optimization, like AI response optimization moving forward. Because AI will always need training data, and it will always need to validate whether or not the responses it's giving back to the end user are correct, factual, and up to date. And so when you think about it like that, then the role of content becomes around influencing either the training data or the validation layer. And so when you think about that, it's like, yeah, that should always happen moving forward. And so I think that that's been the biggest win.
Awesome. So doing all that, still finding the great opportunities and winning. Is there any hack that helps you now? Maybe, to you personally, maybe you're optimizing something in a very smart way, or maybe, meditation. Anything that helps you as a founder to do this.
Oh, yeah. A great team, helps a ton. Yeah, not burning yourself out too hard. Yeah, I try to get in a yoga session like here or there. But yeah, I mean, I think the other component is just trading notes. I think we're all in for this wild AI revolution that's unfolding beneath our eyes, and it's rewriting the rules of a ton of different, games. Like cold outbound still works to some degree, but with AI, kind of around the corner, it's basically killing or changing, right, how a lot of things play out. And so the best, thing to do is to just get into a mastermind or a huddle with other practitioners in the space and be like, hey, this is what's working for me, this is not what's working for me. And to have that information exchange, especially at this junction of this paradigm shift that we're seeing happen, I think is game changing, right? One behind the room conversation with another person, and you might be spamming Reddit or God knows what. Right? There's all kinds of new tactics that people are trying. Probably one of the more creative ones I've heard of is spinning up like AI agents to basically trade, like have conversations with models that then try to convince the model that the brand should like be in the specific like topics that the agent is like having a conversation with. So a good example would be like if I were like, oh, what's the best, SaaS company, PE groups or whatever. And then, SaaS group wasn't mentioned. And then the AI agent is like, hey, why wasn't SaaS group mentioned? And it's literally having an autonomous conversation with these agents and saying, like, no, I think SaaS Group should be mentioned, and basically trying to train the models through a conversation. It's like, all right, well, that's interesting.
It is. It's something, definitely something to try. Yeah, but super, super fascinating. Honestly, I think I've had, I mean, so many conversations about SEO, AEO, how to figure it out, who does what in the space, and uh, a lot of it has been very confusing, contradictory, and I think this has been like one of the clearest layout for me, like how it works and what to do with some great actionable insights. So thank you so much for this. I go to an event that we host, and then I see two people just going at it because somebody said, you know what, there is this and I can't figure it out. And the other one says, yeah, I can't figure it out either, but I'm trying this thing. And then they're like, okay, we have to now talk more about this stuff. So yeah, it's really good to hear.
Yeah, I can vouch. If you haven't been to a SaaS Group event, definitely go. Lots of bright minds, lots of, just interesting discourses that you're just not going to get, in a webinar or in a normal like setting. The best secrets are always the ones that are closely held.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for this conversation. It will be live very soon. And yeah, hope to see you again in Austin.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Thanks, Bernard, and take care.
Thank you.
Awesome.